Chapter 4. Starting Out. We joined Ruana and company at the end of that day at a stop set up by one of the kings for travelers about 15 or 16 kurts away from Kiplar. Welcome. My name be Riley, and I be in charge of this stop. Riley was a short woman with straight blonde hair and deep blue eyes. She wore a white dress with gold trim. At first glance, she wore a dress similar to the mysterious woman. Upon further inspection, it was identical. Ruana was so startled, she forgot all manners. We are, Ruana awkwardly started, which was unusual for her. Traveling to the land of the king? And you're Ruana. Though I'm not sure of the rest of your names, Riley replied. How do you know my name? Ruana questioned, feeling rather odd the little woman already knew at least her name. The woman, Annalee, who told you, Ruana, sent word that you were likely to be coming then, Riley's blue eyes widened. Don't go spreading the word about that, I told you. The messengers are supposed to not be named then. Annalee, Ruana thought, her mind racing. She was thinking so hard she had virtually blocked out Riley's words. That is my mother's name. It cannot be, could it? She hardly dared to hope. She died when I was born. You know that, Ruana Laymar. Still, it is an uncommon one. Corbeth's voice interrupted Ruana's thoughts. We will not, Corbeth replied, with a barely detectable grin. It was a sort of grin that would make you think he had no intentions of doing as he had said, which just happened to be the most common grin on Corbeth's face. Riley relaxed. She had either missed the look on Corbeth's face or not comprehended its meaning. Now, I'd be fairly certain that 3 teenagers that just got done with a long day of traveling don't want to be standing around talking then. If you'd wish, we can move inside, and I can get you all something to eat. She pointed to a large wooden cabin about 5 miles, a measure roughly equal to 3 yards away. Do you have a place we can put our horses? Carrie asked. She considered herself the practical one. Aye, the stables be that way, Riley pointed in the other direction. Corbeth took the reins of the horses and went to put the horses in the stables. Riley turned to Ruana and Carrie. Do you have what you need for your quest? We have them. The book, compass, key, map, and letter, Carrie replied. There be more, but I suppose I can give them to you in the morning. Now if you follow me, I shall cook you the best dinner you've ever tasted, she said with a grin. Dinner sounds wonderful. Many thanks, Carrie replied, following after Riley. She took a few paces before she realized Ruana was not with her. Are you not coming, Ruana? Carrie's words shook Ruana out of her daze. Her mind was still racing. Of course. Time to wake up, Riley whispered. You 3 will need to be getting off early then, since the summer be coming on. And I need to tell you about the rest of the things you'll need. Ruana yawned and stretched. I suppose I'm awake enough for that. Your friend Corbeth already be up. He's saddling the horses. But Carrie would not get up, so I just came to get you up in case you knew how to get her out of bed. Ruana chuckled. Typical Carrie, she thought. I will manage that later. Here's part of what you'll need. She handed Ruana a jar filled with liquid blue substance. The jar contains a poultice, which will cure anything, and I mean anything. Ruana stared at the jar, her mouth slightly agape. How does such a marvelous thing exist? Snow lions make it. I ain't sure how they do, but trust me, it works then. And it even has a good taste, Riley added. Though Ruana could never quite figure out where it came from, Riley pulled out a bow and a quiver full of arrows. Snow lions? Ruana asked. Oh, they're just like normal lions. I reckon you know about 'em, even though you be from Kiplar. They just have white fur, hence the name. But all of 'em follow the king. Ah, Ruana replied, in understanding, despite not knowing of snow lions before Riley's reference to them. Why do I need a different bow? She had made the accurate assumption that the bow and quiver of arrows was for her. Riley looked right into Ruana's eyes. This one never misses, as long as you trust. Trust what? Ruana questioned, already strangely connected to the bow. The bow. The king's artisans made it, to help those on the journey. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a necklace. It was a small copper chain that had a small circular charm with a symbol that was foreign to Ruana imprinted on it. These necklaces are given out to all the followers of the king. Helps to know who is who and all of that. Ruana took it and slipped it over her head. Is that all we need? That be all you need, Riley answered. But do you know about the map? We have it, if that is what you mean, Ruana said, wondering why Riley would need to ask that. Well, I knew that, Riley grinned. But I reckon you don't know what it does. It only shows the land that's right around you. It changes as you move closer and closer to Crenn Riaeth. It also shows where you be on the road. Do you get what I'm saying then? Ruana reached for the map that she had left on the nightstand and studied it. Since it was exactly as Raleigh described, she replied, I believe so. Thank you for everything. It'd be no trouble at all. A wide grin grew across Raleigh's cheery face. Now breakfast be nearly ready, so come with me if you be wanting some of it. They walked to the kitchen of the cabin. Raleigh gave Ruana various supplies and foodstuffs. That should get you all to the next stop, Raleigh said. Or maybe even a little farther than that, but that, of course, depends on how much you eat. Thank you for the provisions, Ruana replied. She grinned and said, I believe we are finally ready for this adventure. Chapter 5 of Caves and Cliffs. It is here we must leave the three and go to the beyond end of Mareme, into the Dragonlands. Or, rather the very edge of the Dragonlands, to the cave of Grimnall. He much would have preferred a more centrally located abode, but it was the best he could do, due to his banishment. If you recall, Aunt Remy wrote a letter to Grimnall about Ruana leaving Kiplar and journeying to the land of the king. The following is Grimnall's reaction. A letter for Grimnall, a courtier tried to swallow his nerves. Give it here, Grimnall again snapped, extremely upset his nap had been so rudely interrupted. The courtier obeyed and hastily scampered out of the cave. Grimnall read the letter, taking a few sips of his fine wine as he did so. Bah! I have no time for such frivolous things, even from Remy. 3 children, leaving one of the smallest villages in Mareme? I will not go. He stopped his shouts as he considered the request more carefully. He certainly did not follow the king, nor was even remotely close to considering the idea of it. Instead, he bitterly hated Crenn Riaeth and all of its dwellers. He certainly did not want any skilled with weapons to go there, as it seemed that Remy's niece fit into that category. He could send someone else, but who? Aha! Origi. Origi was Grimnall's nephew. He was what some would call a geek. Not exacting a fierce, stereotypical dragon like Grimnall, Origi would have much rather spent his days in a library with a good science or math book than off on ridiculous adventures or chasing after anyone, especially anyone traveling to Crenn Riaeth. For you see, he had very secret aspirations of someday traveling there himself. However, it would likely have to be after his uncle was gone. Unlike most dragons that would have found themselves in a similar situation, Origi was so kind-hearted he would never think of doing anything to his uncle. Now you may be wondering why Grimnall would willingly send Origi. The reason? Grimnall wanted Origi to be a true dragon. So, when the opportunity presented itself, Grimnall would send Origi on missions such as these to work on Origi's bravery. They scarcely ever worked, and I would dare say they never worked, though I certainly am not foolish enough to say that to Grimnall. The reason Grimnall continued his work on Origi's bravery, even after seeing virtually no improvements, was a simple one. Origi was Grimnall's only heir. Now there's one thing you must understand about the Dragonlands and its inhabitants. They value their traditions above all else. And as an old dragon law says, Unum ii arisef kukio uminor arifi. Though I suppose most of you will be wanting the common tongue in place of the dragon tongue. In the common tongue, the law states, if a dragon is declared an heir, the said dragon will always be an heir. The only exception to this law was if a dragon left the Dragonlands. And, as Grimnall had little hope of Origi ever doing that, he was stuck. On one hand, he did not want Origi to be his heir, but on the other hand, if Origi was not his heir, his possessions would be given to non-dragons. No dragon who had any self-respect would ever have that happen to its things. It was a disgrace to the fierce name of dragons. So Origi would be his heir, until Grimnall could figure out a way around the dragon law. Perhaps the old beast had a faint idea of Origi disqualifying himself from his status as heir, or perhaps he wanted to be rid of his less-than-ideal nephew for a while, or maybe he had another reason altogether. But at any rate, Origi soon found himself in a most unwanted adventure, as he would not dare disrespect, much less disobey his uncle. And yet, sometimes the most unwanted adventures can turn themselves into the most desired opportunities, if one but changes perspective, or gives it but a little time to turn around. We rejoined the three about a week later during the 1st of May. It has been quite uneventful since they returned to the road. Currently, they are in the plains of Aida, or in the common speech, the Greatest Plains. As I am sure you have gathered from the name, it is the largest stretch of plains in Mareme, We should be out of the plains by sunset, Corbeth muttered, looking at the map. But that means we will be entering the cliffs of Burbach, Carrie said nervously. How will we get the horses? And us, Corbeth interrupted. And us through, Carrie finished with a nasty look at her brother. Simple. We go around them, Corbeth replied. No, we cannot. The road of the king runs right through the cliffs, Ruana said. Are you a fool? Carrie and Corbeth looked at Ruana like she was, well, a fool. The book reads never stray from the road, or trouble will happen. I definitely do not want to go against the book, and in doing so the king, Carrie said, with an embarrassed look on her face. Especially if it will lead to trouble. I do not know, Corbeth said. Trouble is not always a bad thing. Seeing the look on Ruana and Carrie's faces, he quickly added, But if the book says that, who am I to disagree? A few hours later, they stopped for the night. Enjoy the last night before the cliffs, Corbeth said, in a rather morbid tone. Always the pessimist, Ruana replied with a smirk while tying Mayette, her black stallion, to a tree. After dinner of berries, cheese, dried meat, and bread, Ruana played her flute and they turned in for the night. A few hours later, Ruana woke with a start, as did Corbeth. Carrie did not, as she could sleep through near to anything. There was a noise like rustling bushes near the edge of their camp. Ruana reached for her bow. Corbeth reached for his sword. Follow my lead, Corbeth whispered. Ruana rolled her eyes. Between the two of them, she was far better with weaponry, and was the better leader. They crept toward the bushes where the noise came from. I believe the horses heard it as well, Ruana gestured toward the horses. They were stamping their hooves nervously. I agree. They reached the bushes. Come out or you will regret it, Corbeth warned, in a voice that did not make it sound as though a person would not regret it if they did not follow his command. But despite this, a girl and boy crawled out. Do not hurt me or my sister, the boy nervously said. Tell us, what are you doing here? Corbeth said, trying to look fierce. It was obviously not working. Well, my name is Doran, and my sister is named Havia, from the town of Athi. We are following the king's way. Well, we certainly would have no quarrel with you, as we are also on the king's way, Ruana replied, with a sideways look at Corbeth to make sure he behaved himself. We are from Kiplar. I am Ruana Laymar, and this is Corbeth Ritham, and his sister. She is about the horses over there. Is Carrie. Doran and Havia shared a smile. They had found who they were looking for. In truth, they were on special assignment from the king, to get the three to Crenn Riaeth. At least until the other one came. Then it would be his responsibility. But for now, it was up to Doran and Havia. For the three Kiplarian friends journeying to Crenn Riaeth would play a significant role in the coming days, but none more so than Ruana. Chapter 6. The Craggy Cliffs of Burbach. The craggy cliffs of Burbach. The cliffs of Burbach were one of the most dangerous cliffs in the entirety of Mareme. Few creatures made their homes there, for so narrow the paths, so far the drop-offs, that few, if any, could penetrate it. Or so the legends say. However, legends are not always correct, as the three, or rather 5 as I will now refer to them, may be about to discover. Here we are, the cliffs of Burbach. Wonderful, Corbeth muttered sarcastically to himself. To everyone else, he said in a slightly, but not much more cheery tone, Here are the famous cliffs of Burbach. We had better be off. I am certain we all want to be in and out as quickly as possible. With murmurs of agreement, the 5 set out riding the horses. About an hour passed with little effort on the part of the horses, even though the still skeptical Corbeth, although this would soon change, saw that the old legends were proving less than true. If this keeps up, I will never believe any Burbach cliff legend again, Ruana stated deadpan. If it keeps up, the skeptical Corbeth muttered, even though he started to lose his skepticism. He was the sort that had an exceedingly difficult time changing his mind, in case you had not noticed. Little, if any, was said after this until a few hours later, when the trail began to narrow. Ha, the old legends are true, Corbeth thought. I was correct. The trail took a sudden turn for the worse. For Corbeth, anyway. By this point, everyone else had clearly seen the old legends were false. They were true when first told. It was one of the ancient kings of old who cleared the trail through the cliffs. But the legends were so firmly entrenched in the minds of the people of the area that hardly any dared venture there. Yet if they had dared, they would have found things were far different than what they had been told. All this to say, the trail had turned to reveal a rather wide point, about 11 whims long. A whim is about 1/2 foot in length. It would be here they would encounter Orgy in 3, 2... What is that? Kiri wondered. Where? Corbett asked. She looked up. All eyes followed her eyes to see a massive, although rather geeky-looking, fire-breathing dragon. All drew their weapons and held their breaths as Orgy landed. Greetings, humans. My name is Orgy. Are you traveling to Crenn Riaeth? The 5 stared at Orgy like he had 4 extra heads. Do they not know the common speech? Orgy muttered to himself. He said a little louder, Let me try the Mitmore speech, then. Ahem, greet, hungs mum jum Orgy. By now the stunned 5 had somewhat recovered from their shock, and Ruana spoke. To answer your first question, we are traveling to Crenn Riaeth. To answer your second question, we do know the common speech, as I am sure by now you have guessed. May I come with you? I have always wanted to go to Crenn Riaeth. As by now you may have guessed, Orgy had completely and thoroughly forgotten about Grimnall's command to attack and utterly destroy the 5, with the exception of Ruana, who was to be promptly returned to Kiplar and Mareme. At Orgy's question, the 5 were so stunned, they stood there with eyes bulging and mouths wide open. So what may I take as your answer? Orgy asked, about as politely as any dragon can, which was rather surprisingly so, given their reputation. By now, the still very shocked 5 had gotten over their shock enough to speak. If you do not mind, we will need a moment to talk it over, Corbett answered. Of course. I will be just over the hill. Orgy flew away. What do you think? Corbett asked. I think we should let Orgy join us, Ruana replied. If nothing else, no one in their right minds would attack a party with a fire-breathing dragon in their company, even if it does look rather geeky. And how many dragons will be traveling to Crenn Riaeth? I agree, Kiri spoke up. As do I, Doran agreed. Havia nodded her agreement. She was not one to talk if she did not have to. What about you, brother? Kiri asked. I think it would be in our best interest to have a dragon in our company, Corbett rather reluctantly admitted. He was still quite sore about the Burback Cliff legend. May I return now? Orgy called. Yes, Ruana loudly answered. Orgy flew back, barely missing the highest trees. Orgy was rather fearful of heights, so flying as high as most dragons could was simply out of the question. Welcome to our group, Kiri announced. Excellent, Orgy exclaimed. Shall we be off? We joined the 5, plus 1 dragon, a few days later. They are almost out of the Burback Cliffs. Do you see anything odd, Orgy? Corbett inquired. Orgy became their lookout in the skies, in part due to the trail being far too small for any dragon. But the dragon was an obvious choice, since he could fly, and dragons are quite literally legendary for their eyesight, not to mention their other seemingly mythical features. Orgy swung his head in all directions, getting a full view of the landscape. I hear something to the west. It sounds like water. Yes, falling water. Yes, I believe it is the great river, he thought aloud to himself, until he shouted the last bit to the rest. The great river is the widest, longest river in Mareme. The river flows from one end of the Mareme to the other. It also contains the bluest waters of any of Mareme's rivers. And it looks like the road runs right next to the river, Orgy muttered.